Sometimes one simple act of kindness can rewrite destiny. Harmony Lewis, a young black traveler on a train to Busan, had no idea the elderly man she helped was a powerful Korean chairman. She didn't do it for attention. She did it because someone once should have done it for her. That moment changed everything. She never imagined that one act of compassion could mend a broken family and awaken a love that would change 2 generations. Because love doesn't start with perfection. It starts with kindness, and sometimes it starts on a train. Now let's dive in. The hum of the train filled the air like a quiet lullaby, steady and soothing. Outside, the morning light washed over green hills and rice paddies that blurred by in streaks of gold and jade. Inside the KTX, Harmony Lewis sat by the window, headphones on, journal open, camera resting in her lap. She had no particular plan for the day. That was the beauty of this trip. No deadlines, no foster home curfews, no one expecting her anywhere. Just her, a train ticket, and a long stretch of rails leading to Busan. She took a sip of iced coffee and smiled faintly at her reflection in the window. "Made it across the world," she whispered, still figuring out what for. The train door slid open with a hiss. A hush fell over the compartment as an elderly Korean man shuffled in. His gray hair was slightly disheveled, and his eyes darted nervously, searching for a seat. He clutched a small wallet and a folded newspaper like lifelines. "Sir, your ticket?" the attendant asked gently in Korean. The man blinked, then fumbled through his wallet. Pulling out old bills, none of them valid. A few coins clattered to the floor. The attendant frowned. Passengers began to whisper. Someone sighed loudly. Harmony looked up, heart tightening. She had seen that look before. Confusion met with irritation. The world could be unkind to those who didn't fit neatly into its rhythm. Before she could overthink it, she stood. "Excuse me," she said in English, gesturing with a polite bow. "He's with me." "I'll cover his ticket." The attendant hesitated. "You know him?" She smiled softly. "Now I do." Within moments, the problem was solved. The old man sat beside her, murmuring something in Korean she couldn't understand. When the attendant left, he gave her a small bow of gratitude. "You didn't have to do that," he said slowly, his accent thick but warm. Harmony shrugged lightly. "Maybe not. But someone should have done it for me once." His wrinkled face softened into a smile that hinted at wisdom and loneliness all at once. "You are kind, too kind for this world," she laughed. "So I've been told." They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the rhythmic sway of the train filling the space between them. Then he spoke again, eyes distant, voice tinged with memory. "My wife, she loved trains, said they always led somewhere new. Even after 60 years, I still find myself looking for her on every journey." Harmony's chest tightened. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "That sounds like love that never really ends." He turned to her, eyes shining faintly. "It doesn't. It changes shape, but it never ends." She nodded slowly, her gaze returning to the window. "I wouldn't know," she murmured. "I grew up in foster care. No family, just people who came and went. Guess that's why I travel, trying to see what home might look like." The old man regarded her thoughtfully. "Then perhaps today," he said, "you sit beside someone who knows where it is." Harmony chuckled, unsure how to respond. There was something oddly magnetic about him, a presence that felt both fragile and commanding, as though life had carved stories into every line of his face. As the train approached the halfway point, Harmony bought 2 sandwiches and a bottle of water from the cafe cart. She handed one to him. "For you," she said. He smiled again, touched by the gesture. "Kind hearts," he murmured, looking out the window, "are a rare currency these days." The train slowed near a rural station. The hum of conversation rose again. Suddenly, a loud commotion broke out. Security officers and two men in black suits rushed through the aisle. Passengers turned their heads, murmuring. The old man's expression shifted. He looked both guilty and weary, like a child caught sneaking out of the house. When the officers reached their section, they stopped abruptly. Then, shockingly, they bowed. "Chairman Han!" one of them exclaimed in Korean, voice trembling with relief. "We've been searching for you everywhere." Harmony froze. "Chairman?" Passengers gasped as whispers rippled through. The old man sighed heavily, covering his face with his trembling hand. "I told them not to worry," he muttered under his breath. "Can't an old man take a train anymore?" The suited men spoke urgently, explaining something about his disappearance, the panic at the company, the missed medicine. Harmony blinked, the pieces falling together. She hadn't just helped an old man. She'd helped the Han Ji-woo, founder of Han Global Industries, a company whose name appeared on skyscrapers, smartphones, and news headlines. Her heart raced as one of the men turned to her. "You were with the chairman?" Yes," she stammered. He seemed lost." The old man smiled faintly at her again, eyes twinkling. "You see," he said to his attendants, "the world still has good people." He turned back to Harmony, his voice gentle but sure. "Miss Harmony Lewis, you have no idea what you've just done." The attendants guided him toward the exit, the train slowing into the station. Harmony sat frozen in her seat, camera forgotten, coffee gone cold. No idea what she'd done? He was right. Somewhere between Seoul and Busan, between compassion and coincidence, her life had just taken a turn she never saw coming. As the train doors slid open and the crowd swallowed the old man, Harmony caught his final smile through the glass, one that promised her story with the Han family was only beginning. The drive back to Seoul felt longer than the train ride to Busan. Harmony sat quietly in the back of the sleek black sedan, the city lights of the capital glimmering in the distance like a restless constellation. She still couldn't believe it. The kind, forgetful old man she met on the train was Chairman Han Ji-woo, one of South Korea's most influential business figures. The men in black suits, the urgency, the polite bowing. It all felt like a scene from a drama she'd accidentally wandered into. The chairman, now resting beside her, smiled faintly. "You didn't have to come, Miss Harmony. You've already done enough." "I didn't want to leave without making sure you got home safely," she replied softly. "Besides, I couldn't just let you disappear again." He chuckled, a gentle, fatherly sound. "If my son heard that, he'd think you were braver than my entire board of directors." Harmony smiled, not realizing how prophetic those words would soon be. When the car turned into the long private driveway, Harmony's eyes widened. The Han estate wasn't just large, it was breathtaking. A sweeping mansion sat nestled in the hills above the Han River, its architecture a blend of glass, marble, and quiet tradition. Security guards stood at discreet intervals. The main entrance opened to reveal a long red-carpeted hall. A man in his early 30s stood at the top of the stairs. He was tall, composed, and carried the kind of presence that filled the room without saying a word. Hyun-jae Han, the infamous CEO of Han Global. Cold, calculated, brilliant, and utterly unreadable. His gaze fell on Harmony the moment she stepped inside. For a fraction of a second, his eyes flickered with something, surprise, curiosity, but just as quickly, they hardened again into polite distance. "Father," he said in Korean, his voice deep and measured, "you caused quite a stir today." "I only wanted to see the ocean," Chairman Han replied mildly. "You work too much. Someone had to remember what peace looks like." Hyun-jae's jaw tightened slightly, but he said nothing. Instead, he turned to Harmony, expression smooth as stone. You must be Miss Lewis, correct? She nodded. Yes, I met your father on the train. His gaze lingered on her, calm but assessing, as though scanning her for motive. Then he held out an envelope. Thank you for your kindness. Please accept this as compensation for your trouble. Harmony blinked. Compensation? It's standard courtesy, he said flatly. You didn't have to inconvenience yourself. Her lips parted slightly. Mr. Han, I didn't help your father because of who he is. I didn't even know who he was, she said, voice steady. I helped because he needed help. A faint silence hung between them, heavy, delicate. Even the servants paused, sensing the tension. Hyun-jae's eyes darkened, not in anger, but something else. No one spoke to him like that, not in that tone, not without fear. The chairman chuckled, breaking the spell. See, Hyun-jae? There are still people who act from heart, not benefit. Harmony bowed politely. I should be going. I'm glad he's safe now. But as she turned, the chairman spoke again. Nonsense. You'll stay for dinner. It's the least we can do. Before she could protest, a maid guided her toward the dining hall. The room glowed in warm amber light, adorned with elegant flower arrangements and traditional paintings. The long table looked intimidatingly formal. As they sat, the chairman began talking. Stories about his wife, his travels, and the empire he'd built. Harmony listened intently, responding with genuine interest. Across the table, Hyun-jae observed in silence, occasionally cutting his father's food with quiet precision, his gestures restrained and mechanical. His world was built on logic, not laughter. Yet, as he watched Harmony engage his father so naturally, smiling, teasing, listening, he found himself strangely captivated. He hadn't seen his father laugh like this in years. Miss Lewis, the chairman said suddenly, setting down his chopsticks, tell me about you. You're not from here, are you? Harmony smiled. No, sir. I'm from Chicago. I came to South Korea on vacation. I wanted to see Busan, but I guess fate had a different itinerary. The chairman chuckled warmly. Ah, fate. It has a cruel sense of humor sometimes. Hyun-jae's eyes flicked toward her. You came alone? Yes, she replied, meeting his gaze evenly. I like to travel solo. It helps me breathe. He tilted his head slightly, studying her. Most people find that lonely. Harmony smiled softly. Not when you spent your life surrounded by noise that never cared. Something in that answer silenced him. His grip on the chopsticks tightened, and for a brief moment, something unguarded flickered across his features. Empathy, maybe, or recognition. The chairman watched the silent exchange with quiet satisfaction. Then he smiled, nostalgic and tender. You remind me of my wife, he said, eyes glistening slightly, unafraid of pride. Gentle but strong, the kind of woman who speaks truth even in a room full of power. Harmony's cheeks warmed. That's a big compliment. The old man smiled knowingly. It's the truth. Across the table, Hyun-jae looked at her again. Longer this time. Something in him shifted, imperceptibly. The sharp edges of his expression softened, just enough to betray that he had felt the same thing his father had just voiced. Dinner ended quietly, but the silence carried something new. Something alive. As Harmony prepared to leave, Hyun-jae walked her to the door. The night air outside was cool, scented faintly of pine and rain. Thank you for what you did, he said at last, voice lower, more personal than before. My father doesn't usually wander off. You could have ignored him. Harmony smiled, tucking a curl behind her ear. I'm glad I didn't. He hesitated, then gave a short nod. Good night, Miss Lewis. Good night, Mr. Han. As the car took her back, Harmony glanced once more at the mansion glowing behind her. She didn't know why her heart beat faster, whether from nerves or something deeper. But one thing was certain. For the first time in years, Hyun-jae Han was no longer thinking about quarterly reports or mergers. He was thinking about her, and somewhere inside that fortress of ice and precision, something small and dangerous had begun to melt. The chairman watched from his upstairs balcony, a faint smile on his lips. Unafraid of pride, he murmured again, just like your mother. The morning sun spilled across the Han Global Tower, glinting off endless rows of glass. Inside, Hyun-jae Han sat behind his vast mahogany desk, but his mind wasn't on the report spread before him. He hadn't been able to stop thinking about her. Harmony Lewis, the woman who refused his money, the stranger who treated his father like a person instead of a title. The reason his father smiled again after years of silence. He tried to shake it off, focus on numbers, quarterly forecasts, shareholder reports. But his chest tightened every time he remembered her laugh at dinner, the way she'd met his eyes without flinching. She didn't belong to his world of mergers and politeness. She was sunlight where he'd built only walls. When his father's assistant stepped into his office holding a small travel bag, Hyun-jae looked up sharply. She forgot this in the car the other night, the man explained. The CEO stared at the bag for a long moment. He could have just sent it by courier, but instead, he heard himself say, I'll deliver it myself. That afternoon, he found her in Insadong. She was walking down the colorful street lined with traditional shops, camera swinging from her wrist, stopping occasionally to photograph street vendors or a child chasing pigeons. Harmony Lewis, he called softly. She turned, surprise flickering across her face before it melted into a smile. Mr. Han, you found me? He lifted her small tan travel bag. You left this? She laughed. I was wondering where that went. He hesitated, hands in pockets. My father insisted I properly thank you for everything. May I offer you a tour of Seoul? Consider it repayment on his behalf. Harmony arched a brow, teasing. So this is business. Part gratitude, he replied evenly, though his voice was softer than usual. Part personal interest. Her eyes lingered on his for a moment, testing his sincerity. Then she smiled. All right, Mr. Han, show me your city. They spent the day walking through Gyeongbokgung Palace, wandering under ancient gates while the air shimmered with spring warmth. He told her bits of history, awkward at first, then gradually relaxed. She teased him about being too serious. He teased her about taking 100 photos of the same courtyard. Their laughter came easier than either expected. Later, at Namsan Tower, the sun dipped low behind the Seoul skyline. They stood near the observation deck where thousands of love locks hung in every color, glittering in the fading light. Harmony leaned on the railing, the breeze tugging at her curls. It's beautiful up here, she murmured. You can see the whole city breathing. Hyun-jae watched her quietly, his heart uneasy with emotions he didn't fully understand. I haven't been up here since I was a child, he admitted. My mother used to bring me. After she passed, my father stopped coming. He buried himself in work. She turned to him gently, and you followed him. His gaze met hers. I thought it was strength, but lately, it feels like I've just been standing still. Harmony's voice softened, wrapping around him like a balm. Maybe it's time you start following your heart instead. The words lingered in the quiet air. For a moment, it felt like the entire city had gone still. Just the two of them, standing above the world, suspended between grief and grace. He swallowed hard. You make it sound simple. It isn't, she said with a faint smile, but neither is living a life that doesn't feel alive. Something shifted inside him then, subtle but irreversible. The cold air who once measured everything in terms of risk and gain felt the strange, disarming pull of wanting again. Later that week, their connection deepened over shared lunches, coffee breaks, and chance phone calls that stopped feeling accidental. Harmony brought lightness to every moment, showing him corners of Seoul he'd long forgotten. Street performers by the Han River, a grandmother selling flowers near Dongdaemun, a jazz cafe tucked behind old stone walls. She reminded him of humanity, the kind he had locked away behind glass towers. But just as the thaw in his heart began, the world he lived in decided to strike. At Han Global, whispers began spreading. Someone had dug into Harmony's past. Foster homes, part-time jobs, an old accusation about a missing wallet from her teenage years. It was cleared years ago, but gossip didn't care for facts. One rival board member, Park Sung-hoon, bitter that the chairman favored his son's leadership, saw an opportunity. He called the PR director into his office. "Make it public," he said coldly. "Let's see how long our CEO's fascination lasts when the world calls her a scam artist." The next morning, Hyun-jae arrived early at his office. The air was heavy with the sharp scent of brewed coffee and unease. His assistant laid a file on his desk. "Sir, this was forwarded by PR." He opened it and froze. Across the glossy page was a photograph of Harmony smiling on the streets of Seoul. The headline screamed in bold black letters, "Mysterious foreigner caught in Han family scandal." Beneath it, rumors of her questionable past, alleged motives for getting close to the chairman, and speculation that she was a gold digger, exploiting emotional weakness. Hyun-jae's jaw clenched so tightly his teeth ached. His father's name, her face, lies twisting truth into poison. He stared at the article until the words blurred, anger and disbelief colliding in his chest. Harmony, the one person who had expected nothing from them, was being painted as everything she wasn't. For the first time in years, Hyun-jae felt something unfamiliar flood through him. Protectiveness. Fierce, immediate, unshakable. But beneath it, a darker question burned. Who would believe her innocence in a world built on image? And would he have the courage to stand beside her when his own empire was at stake? As Hyun-jae stared at the photo of Harmony on his desk, one truth hit him like a blow. He hadn't just fallen for her kindness. He'd fallen in love. And now, that love was about to be tested by the cruelest currency in his world, reputation. The news spread like wildfire. Every major outlet in Seoul carried the same headline, "Mysterious foreigner caught in Han family scandal." Photographs of Harmony and Chairman Han at the train station filled the front pages. Each image twisted into a cruel narrative that she was a schemer, a manipulator, a woman who used pity to get close to power. Hyun-jae stared at the screen in disbelief, then shut his office blinds as if to block out the noise. He knew exactly who had orchestrated it. Park Sung-hoon and his circle of snakes on the board. But knowing the source didn't quiet the ache. It only sharpened it. When the reporters surrounded the Han estate the next morning, cameras flashing like gunfire, Chairman Han willed himself to the front gates. His voice trembled from age, but his conviction was thunder. "She is not what you call her," he declared in front of the crowd, his frail hands gripping the wheelchair armrest. "That young woman saved my life, not my reputation. She treated me as a man, not as a title. She is the daughter I never had," the crowd murmured, moved by the old man's sincerity. But cameras could not capture the full story, nor the storm brewing behind closed doors. Inside the mansion, Hyun-jae stood by the window, watching his father from afar. His chest tightened. That phrase, "the daughter I never had," struck something deep and unspoken. Harmony had managed to reach the part of his father that he himself had failed to heal. And that truth burned. His assistant entered quietly. "Sir, the board suggests you release a statement to distance the company from—" "I'll handle it," Hyun-jae cut in, his tone sharp. But he didn't handle it. He couldn't. He was torn between fury at the injustice and the echoing fear that Harmony might be dragged deeper into his world. A world that destroyed anyone who wasn't armored for it. When Harmony arrived later that day, her face pale but composed, the atmosphere shifted. The servants stopped whispering. The air held its breath. She stood at the edge of Hyun-jae's study doorway. "I didn't come here for your father's defense," she said softly. "I came because you haven't answered my calls." He didn't turn. His voice came low. "You shouldn't have to face this, Harmony. Not because of me." Her heart stung. "Because of you?" "Hyun-jae, this started because I helped a man who needed help. The rest of this, your world, your rumors, has nothing to do with me." He turned slowly then, eyes shadowed, face unreadable. "Everything in my world has consequences. Every smile, every headline, every mistake." She took a step closer. "You think I helped your father to get to you?" His answer came out like a confession tearing through restraint. "No. I think I'm scared of how much you've already gotten to me." The words hung between them, raw and trembling. For a moment, Harmony thought he would close the distance, pull her into the warmth that lived beneath all his control. But instead, he stepped back. Fear, not rejection, flickered across his face. "You deserve a life untouched by all this," he said, "and I can't give that to you." "Then what do you want me to do? Just disappear?" His silence was answer enough. That night, Harmony packed her suitcase. Each fold of clothing felt heavier than the last. She wasn't angry, just tired. Tired of fighting to prove she wasn't after anything. Tired of trying to make space in a world that treated her kindness like a weapon. When dawn broke, she wheeled her suitcase into Seoul Station, the same place where the strange story had begun. The station smelled of coffee, steel, and rain. The scent of departures. She bought a one-way ticket back to Busan. As she waited for the announcement, a familiar voice called her name. "Harmony!" She turned, eyes widening. Chairman Han sat in a wheelchair near the platform entrance, bundled in a soft gray coat. His aide stood nearby, but the old man's eyes, though weaker, gleamed with the same warmth as before. "You shouldn't be out here," she said quickly, kneeling beside him. "It's too cold." "I've lived through colder," he chuckled softly. "When my wife died, I thought I'd never feel warmth again. Then you came along and reminded me what it means to care without expecting anything in return." Harmony's throat tightened. "You've already defended me. You've done enough." He reached into his pocket and pressed an envelope into her hands. "If you go now, my son may never learn what love really means." Inside was a photograph of a younger woman, beautiful, serene, standing in front of Namsan Tower. On the back, written in careful Korean calligraphy, "Teach him what she once taught me, how to stay." Harmony looked up, eyes shimmering. "Your wife?" He nodded faintly. "The only person who ever made me slow down long enough to remember why I was building anything at all. Hyun-jae lost her too young, and then he lost me to my empire." A silence passed, filled with the sound of trains arriving and leaving. "She would have liked you," the chairman whispered. "You remind me of her heart. Steady, even in chaos." Tears welled in Harmony's eyes. "I don't know if he wants me to stay." "Then stay until he learns that wanting isn't the same as deserving." Harmony held the photo close, her heart caught between pain and purpose. The announcement for her train echoed over the speakers, but she didn't move. The chairman smiled faintly, his voice thin but strong. "Don't run from him, my dear. He's already running from himself." As she watched the old man's car drive away, the envelope still in her hand, Harmony felt the weight of something bigger than coincidence, something almost divine. Maybe she had been sent here not just to help an old man on a train, but to heal the fractures in an empire built on silence. And maybe, just maybe, it wasn't over yet. As the next train to Busan roared past, Harmony stood perfectly still, her ticket trembling in her hand, the photograph pressed to her heart, and a single thought echoing through her soul. I can leave now, or I can teach him how to stay. The boardroom was made of glass, steel, and ambition, the kind of place where power had a voice, and compassion was a liability. Chairman Han Ji-woo sat at the head of the long table, pale but determined, his hands trembling slightly as he turned the pages of a quarterly report. Around him, a dozen executives murmured about losses, headlines, and reputation. Words like damage control and public trust filled the air like smoke. Hyun-jae sat across from his father, quiet, composed, every line of his suit precise. He'd been raised in this very room, shaped by its logic, the empire his father built and he perfected. But as the discussion grew louder, his father's voice grew weaker, until suddenly it stopped altogether. The chairman's pen slipped from his hand, rolling across the polished surface. Then he slumped forward. "Father!" Hyun-jae's voice cracked through the sterile silence. Papers scattered, chairs screeched, panic erupted. He was at his father's side in seconds, calling his name, but the old man didn't respond. The world that measured everything in numbers suddenly felt worthless. Hours later, the hallway outside Seoul General Hospital buzzed with reporters and anxious investors. The name Han was trending again. Not for scandal this time, but fear. Hyun-jae sat alone in the waiting area, staring at his hands. His father was alive, but barely conscious. The doctors said stress and exhaustion had taken their toll. One by one, board members approached him, voices cold behind their concern. "CEO Han, the market is unstable. We need a statement. Distance yourself from the train girl scandal while you can. Don't risk the empire for sympathy." Hyun-jae rose abruptly, his tone like frost. "My father is fighting for his life, and all you see are numbers." A silence fell. He turned away, pacing toward the glass wall. Through it, he could see the faint shadow of his father in the hospital bed. Memories flashed uninvited. The first day he took over the company, his father's proud but distant nod, the silent years that followed, and then Harmony. Laughing with the old man in the garden, teasing him at dinner, bringing color back into their grayscale lives. He closed his eyes. What have I done with all this power? Later that evening, he went to his father's room. The monitors beeped steadily, each sound a fragile reminder that the old man still lived. Hyun-jae reached for his father's hand, but stopped halfway, afraid that touch might break him. "Son." The voice was barely a whisper. Hyun-jae leaned in immediately. "Father, don't speak. Rest." But the old man smiled faintly. "Rest is for those who forget what they're fighting for." His eyes opened weakly, finding his son's. "Remember this. Power fades, Hyun-jae. People don't." A tear slipped down the CEO's cheek, the first he'd allowed himself in decades. "Father, don't leave me now. I already left when I stopped seeing people. Don't make the same mistake." The monitor beeped steadily, his father's hand tightening briefly in his, then relaxing. Hyun-jae bowed his head, breathing through the ache. 2 days later, Harmony stood at the hospital reception desk, her heart pounding. She hadn't seen Hyun-jae since the night she nearly left Seoul. But when she read about the chairman's collapse, she couldn't stay away. The nurse led her quietly down the hall. The moment she stepped into the room, she froze. The chairman lay weak but peaceful, the sunlight falling softly across his face. Harmony placed her small Bible on the nightstand, knelt beside the bed, and whispered a prayer. Father in heaven, you gave me a home when I had none. Please give him strength now. Please remind his son that love is still worth everything. Tears glistened in her eyes, slipping freely. What she didn't know was that Hyun-jae had just stepped into the doorway. He froze, watching her. Her head bowed, her voice trembling with the same words his mother used to pray when he was a boy. Something inside him shattered. Harmony! His voice was rough, broken. She turned slowly, startled. Hyun-jae. He walked toward her, not as the cold CEO, not as the heir of an empire, but as a man stripped bare. He sank to his knees beside her, his forehead resting against her hand. I built an empire and lost myself, he said hoarsely. You helped me find my father, but you also found me. Her fingers trembled as she touched his cheek. Then don't lose yourself again. He nodded, tears glimmering. Not this time. That night, Hyun-jae made a decision. The next morning, the PR head who had authorized the smear campaign was escorted out of the Han Global building. His position terminated immediately. No appeals, no negotiation. Then, at precisely 10 a.m., Hyun-jae held a press conference that no one expected. Reporters filled the room, cameras flashing. The tension was palpable. Everyone waited for him to distance himself from Harmony, to salvage his brand. Instead, he stood tall, the image of composure, but his voice carried warmth that stunned the audience. My father, Chairman Han Ji-woo, is recovering. And before he rests, I want him to hear this. I will no longer lead this company from fear of public opinion. He paused, letting the silence breathe. The woman you insulted, the one you called a fraud, reminded my father and me that kindness builds more than business ever will. Without her, we would have lost each other. Flashes erupted. The journalists exchanged shocked looks. He continued, his voice steady. Harmony Lewis is not a scandal. She is the reason my family remembers what humanity looks like. Outside the building, the statement spread like a spark through dry air. For the first time in Han Global's history, compassion made the news instead of conquest. When Harmony saw the broadcast from the hospital waiting room, her eyes filled with tears. The old chairman, awake now and faintly smiling, squeezed her hand. He did it, he whispered. He finally remembered what power is for. She laughed through tears. You raised a good man. No, the chairman corrected softly. You did. That evening, as the sun dipped over Seoul, Hyun-jae found Harmony standing by the hospital balcony. The wind lifted her curls as she turned, and for a moment, neither spoke. He stepped closer, his expression open and unguarded. I should have believed in you sooner. You were afraid, she said quietly. So was I. He smiled faintly. Then maybe we can stop being afraid together. Harmony studied him. Her heart caught somewhere between awe and forgiveness. You really said all that? In front of the entire press? He chuckled softly. I figured if I was going to fall, I might as well fall for the right reason. She shook her head with a laugh that trembled into tears. You're impossible. Maybe, he said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. But I'm yours, if you'll have me. As night settled over Seoul, the city lights reflected in the hospital window like distant stars. Inside, Harmony rested her head against Hyun-jae's shoulder while the chairman slept peacefully. No titles, no headlines, just a family, mended not by wealth, but by grace. And for the first time in his life, Hyun-jae Han realized the empire didn't fall. It finally learned how to stand. In a world built on power, it took love to teach him how to be human again. The morning the world lost Chairman Han Ji-woo, Seoul felt quieter. The streets still buzzed with life, but inside the Han mansion, time stood still. A nurse stepped into the room first, then quietly called for Hyun-jae. He arrived within seconds, his breath caught before he even reached the bed. His father lay peacefully beneath a white blanket, his features serene, as if he had simply drifted into sleep. No machines, no struggle, just peace. On the bedside table, next to a faded photo of his late wife, sat a flash drive sealed in a small silver case. A handwritten note lay beside it, "For my son and for Harmony." Later that evening, the family gathered in the private media room of the mansion, a small space his father had used for company addresses. The air was heavy, filled with quiet tears and memories. Hyun-jae pressed play. The screen flickered to life, and there he was, his father, smiling faintly, eyes bright despite his frailty. "If you're watching this, it means I've gone home," Chairman Han began, his voice calm, rich with wisdom. "To my son, you've spent your life chasing strength, not realizing that gentleness is what holds everything together. To the woman who brought me home, thank you. You reminded me that compassion is not weakness. It's the root of legacy." He paused, his expression softening. "Love," he said quietly, "is the only legacy worth building. The rest fades like smoke. Don't build an empire that ends with you. Build one that outlives you through hearts you've touched." The video ended on his warm smile, the same one he'd given Harmony on the train the day everything began. Hyun-jae sat still long after the screen went black. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt sacred. Weeks passed. Seoul moved on, but his father's words never left him. Hyun-jae finalized his father's will, restructured the company to prioritize ethics over image, and stepped down temporarily to relearn what living meant. And when the board protested, he simply said, "It's what my father wanted." Then, one evening, as the sun sank behind the city skyline, Hyun-jae boarded a familiar train to Busan. Harmony's guest house overlooked the sea, a modest, sunlit place she'd rented for peace and anonymity. She'd begun teaching English part-time and volunteering at a small foster home nearby. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest, healing. When she opened her door that night and saw him standing there, dressed simply, a travel bag slung over his shoulder, wind in his hair, she froze. "Hyun-jae?" He smiled softly, almost shyly. "You look surprised." "I am," she said, heart pounding. "I thought you'd be back in Seoul running the empire." He stepped closer, his eyes warm with emotion. "My father left me his company, but you're the one thing I can't run like a business." Her breath caught. The honesty in his voice cut straight through her defenses. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. The ring inside wasn't grand. A simple gold band with a tiny diamond that caught the light like morning dew. He opened it quietly. "I used to think commitment was a contract," he said. "Numbers, promises, conditions. But love doesn't fit into structure or profit. It's faith. It's surrender." Tears welled in Harmony's eyes. "You practiced that speech, didn't you?" she whispered, smiling through tears. He laughed softly. "Every night since you left Seoul." Then, his expression turned tender. "Harmony, I don't want to build empires anymore. I just want to build days with you." Her hand trembled as she touched his face. "Then don't run," she said, voice breaking into a smile. "Just stay." He slipped the ring onto her finger, his thumb brushing away her tears. Always. Outside, the waves crashed against the shore as the wind carried the scent of rain and sea. Months later, Busan's sky shimmered in the morning light as a new building was unveiled in the heart of the city. The sign at the entrance read, "The Han and Harmony Foundation, for foster youth and widowed seniors, where second chances begin." Children played in the courtyard as elderly volunteers helped them plant a garden. Harmony laughed as a small boy tugged her hand toward the playground. Hyun-jae stood nearby, watching her with quiet admiration. Reporters gathered for the ribbon cutting, but the moment didn't feel like a press event. It felt like a homecoming. A bronze plaque was unveiled near the front door. She helped a stranger on a train and found the love that changed 2 generations. As the cameras clicked, Hyun-jae leaned close, his voice soft enough for only her to hear. "You found my father, Harmony." She looked up at him, eyes glistening, a smile of peace curving her lips. "No," she whispered, "God found us all." He pulled her gently into his arms as the crowd applauded. The wind carried the faint, distant sound of a train whistle, rolling south toward Busan, the same sound that once began everything. Sometimes love doesn't start with fireworks. It starts with a seat on a train, a kind act, and a heart brave enough to stay. 1 year later, Busan was dressed in spring, cherry blossoms trembling in the ocean breeze, sunlight glittering off the waves like scattered glass. The Han and Harmony Foundation had grown from a dream into something real, something alive. Children's laughter filled the courtyard. Elderly volunteers painted beside them, teaching tiny hands how to mix colors and plant herbs. The scent of freshly baked bread drifted from the kitchen, where Harmony had insisted on a weekly family brunch, because she said, healing doesn't happen in silence. It happens over shared meals. Inside the community hall, a photo hung above the entrance. Chairman Han Ji-woo smiling, eyes full of peace. Beneath it, the words he'd once said glowed in gold script. "Love is the only legacy worth building." Harmony stood by the window, watching the children play, a soft smile lighting her face. She wore a cream sundress and simple gold jewelry, the same ring still resting on her finger. Her hair was tied up loosely, curls swaying in the warm wind. From behind her, familiar arms slid around her waist. "Didn't I tell you to rest today?" Hyun-jae murmured against her ear, his voice gentle, teasing. Harmony laughed, leaning back into him. "Rest? When the kitchen's full, the kids are hungry, and your day off turned into another board meeting?" He smiled, pressing a kiss to her temple. "The meeting was short. I told them I'm officially retiring from running the empire. I'd rather build one here." She turned in his arms, eyebrows raised. "Oh? And what exactly are you planning to build?" His gaze softened. "A life that looks like you." Her laughter bubbled up, warm and unguarded. "That's dangerously romantic, Mr. Han." He grinned. "I learned from the best." They stepped outside together, strolling through the courtyard. The children greeted them cheerfully, "Harmony Nuna, Hyun-jae Samchon," before racing past with kites that painted the air in streaks of color. Harmony paused by the small garden plot where roses and herbs grew side by side. She knelt to water a young plant, smiling as she saw the tag beside it. "Chairman Han's garden, planted in memory." "Your father would have loved this," she said softly. Hyun-jae knelt beside her, placing his hand over hers. "He does. I see him in every smile here. In you." Their fingers intertwined over the soil, and for a moment the world slowed. Just the sound of waves, wind, and laughter. That evening, the foundation hosted its first anniversary celebration. Guests filled the courtyard with lanterns, live music, and prayer. Elderly volunteers shared stories. Children performed songs they'd written about hope. As the last song ended, a little boy climbed on stage with a shaky smile. "This one's for Miss Harmony," he said shyly. The melody began. Gentle guitar, soft drums. You helped a stranger, but you stayed for us all. You gave us a home where no heart feels small. You said love is something you do, not say. And because of you, we found our way. Tears shimmered in Harmony's eyes. Hyun-jae took her hand as the crowd applauded. She turned to him, whispering, "This is what legacy feels like, isn't it?" He nodded. "Not power, not profit, just people." Later, when the courtyard was quiet and lanterns floated gently toward the sea, Harmony and Hyun-jae walked hand in hand along the foundation's balcony. He stopped suddenly, reaching into his coat pocket. "You know," he said, smiling faintly, "there's something I never told you." She tilted her head. "Should I be worried?" "Not this time." He pulled out an old, worn train ticket, folded carefully, preserved like something sacred. Harmony gasped softly. "You kept it?" "The one from the day you met my father," he said, voice thick with emotion. "I found it in his study after he passed. On the back, he'd written one word." He handed it to her. In faded ink, she read, "Found." Her throat tightened. He nodded. He meant you. U.S. Everything that came after. Tears slipped down her cheeks and he brushed them away gently. "Do you ever wonder," she whispered, "what would have happened if I'd never gotten on that train?" He smiled softly. "Then maybe my father would have still wandered. Maybe I would have still been lost. But God, he had other plans." She leaned into him, her voice tender. "He always does." As the last lantern disappeared into the horizon, Hyun-jae kissed her forehead, whispering the same words that once ended his father's final message. "Love is the only legacy worth building." And as the distant sound of a train echoed through the night, rolling toward Busan once more, Harmony smiled through tears, her heart full. Hyun-jae whispered, "You found my father, Harmony." She smiled softly, resting her head against his chest. "No, God found us all." The wind carried their laughter into the night, over the garden, over the city, over every heart their love had quietly touched. The end. From a train ride to a legacy of love. Harmony and Hyun-jae proved that kindness still changes lives. Empires fade, headlines disappear, but love, real, selfless love, remains forever. If this story touched your heart, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who still believes in grace. Till the next video, keep spreading kindness like confetti, because love always finds its way.